Hello, everyone. They called her the Black Panther of fashion. Her walk fierce, fluid, unstoppable, could silence a runway and electrify a crowd. Naomi Campbell was not just a supermodel, she was the supermodel. From teenage discovery to global domination, she became one of the most famous faces in the world, breaking racial barriers while embodying pure glamour. But Naomi's story was never just about beauty. It was about power, survival, and an unyielding will to stay on top. Loved, feared, and endlessly discussed, she commanded the fashion world for decades. Yet behind the diamond gowns and front row seats was a life marked by triumph, controversy, and reinvention. This is the story of a woman who refused to walk unless it was in her own direction. Naomi Elaine Campbell was born on May 22, 1970 in Streatham, South London, to Valerie Morris, a Jamaican-born professional dancer. Her father left before she was born, and Naomi never met him. Raised by her mother and later a stepfather, she spent her early childhood in Rome, where Valerie worked as a dancer in a touring company. Eventually, they returned to London, settling in the working-class neighborhood of South London, far from the glamorous runways Naomi would later command. Her upbringing was infused with discipline and artistry. Valerie's demanding dance schedule and her own Caribbean heritage exposed Naomi to a mix of cultures, rhythms, and creative influences. She attended the Barbara Speake Stage School from the age of 5, studying ballet, tap, and modern dance. Naomi's natural grace was evident early, not just in her movement, but in her commanding presence, a quality that made her stand out even in a room full of performers. She later enrolled at the Italia Conti Academy of Theatre Arts, where she honed her skills in drama and dance. Naomi originally dreamed of becoming a dancer, inspired by her mother's career and the elegance of performance. Her training gave her a unique posture and poise assets that would later become the foundation of her legendary catwalk. Despite the artistic environment, Naomi's early life was not without challenges. Her mother's career meant she was often away on tour, and Naomi had to adapt to periods of separation. She was also aware of the racial prejudices that existed in Britain at the time, and she carried a quiet determination to prove herself beyond stereotypes. By her teenage years, her striking looks, a perfect blend of Jamaican heritage and European refinement, began drawing attention. Tall, with almond-shaped eyes and flawless bone structure, she exuded a maturity beyond her years. But at this stage, Naomi was still focused on performing arts, not modeling. That would soon change. At the age of 15, while window shopping in London's Covent Garden, she was spotted by Beth Bolt, head of the Synchro Model agency. It was an encounter that would shift the course of her life entirely. Naomi's background, a fusion of discipline from dance, resilience from her upbringing, and a multicultural identity, would prepare her for an industry that was both seductive and ruthless. She was about to step into a world where beauty was currency, competition was cutthroat, and every move she made would be watched. It was a spring afternoon in 1985 when 15-year-old Naomi Campbell's life changed forever. She had been walking through Covent Garden in London, a familiar spot where she often browsed shop windows and soaked in the city's energy. Beth Bolt, head of Synchro Model agency, was there that day, and she saw something in Naomi that could not be taught, a presence so magnetic that it made people turn their heads without knowing why. At first, Naomi was hesitant. She had ambitions of becoming a dancer, not a model, and the fashion world felt like a distant, intimidating place. But Beth persisted, convincing her to take a few test photographs. Those images revealed exactly what Bolt had sensed. Naomi had the kind of face that could tell a story without moving a muscle. Her first professional booking came almost instantly, a photo shoot for Elle magazine. The shoot was scheduled to run just before her 16th birthday, meaning Naomi would legally start her career as a professional model just as she was stepping into adulthood. In the photographs, she radiated a confidence far beyond her years, and the industry took notice. What made her stand out was not just her beauty, It was the way she moved. Years of ballet training had given her a fluid, almost feline grace that would later earn her the nickname the Black Panther. On set, she was alert to every click of the camera, subtly shifting poses with an instinct that seemed almost supernatural for someone so new. Word spread quickly. Bookings for British magazines and catalogs came first. But soon, international opportunities followed. Paris, Milan, and New York began calling. And Naomi found herself stepping into a world of designers, photographers, and stylists who would shape her early career. But breaking into high fashion as a young Black model in the mid-1980s was no easy feat. Many luxury brands still preferred white models, and Naomi was told more than once that her look was too ethnic for certain campaigns. Instead of shrinking away, she leaned into her uniqueness. She understood, even then, that being different could be her greatest strength. Her first major runway breakthrough came when she walked for Azzedine Alaïa, the Tunisian-born designer who became her mentor and protector. Alaïa not only appreciated her talent, but also treated her like family, inviting her to stay at his home in Paris. This relationship was the bridge that connected Naomi to the heart of European fashion. Soon, she was walking for Gianni Versace, Karl Lagerfeld at Chanel, and Yves Saint Laurent designers who were willing to put her front and center. The press began to take note of the young model who seemed to appear everywhere, dominating runways and editorial spreads alike. Yet for Naomi, it was not just about walking shows, it was about making each appearance unforgettable. She had a way of locking eyes with the audience, her head held high, her stride unbroken, as if daring the world to look away. By the end of her first year in the industry, she had achieved what most models could only dream of. She was on the verge of becoming a true international name. She was not yet part of the legendary supermodel era, but the foundations of her reign were already in place. Naomi Campbell's entry into fashion was not a slow climb. It was a meteoric rise. And while she was still just a teenager, it was clear that she was not here to simply take part in the industry. She was here to change it. By the late 1980s, Naomi Campbell had gone from an exciting new face to one of the most in-demand models in the world. The turning point came in 1988 when she appeared on the cover of French Vogue, becoming the first Black model ever to do so. The cover was not just another milestone in her career, it was a cultural shift, challenging decades of Eurocentric beauty standards in high fashion. From that moment on, Naomi was unstoppable. She became part of the Trinity, the holy trio of 1990s supermodels alongside Christy Turlington and Linda Evangelista. The three dominated runways, magazine covers, and advertising campaigns, moving through the industry with an almost royal authority. Designers and photographers did not just want them, they needed them. Her runway walk became the stuff of legend, a fierce, gliding stride that combined power and elegance in perfect balance. Gianni Versace adored her, often putting her front and center in his shows, where she would close the runway in dramatic show-stopping gowns. Karl Lagerfeld at Chanel trusted her with couture looks that demanded both poise and attitude. She walked for Yves Saint Laurent, Valentino, and countless others, each time embodying the spirit of the brand without losing her own identity. Editorially, Naomi was everywhere. She appeared on the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle across multiple countries, becoming one of the few models recognizable by a single name. Campaigns for Ralph Lauren, Dolce & Gabbana, and Isaac Mizrahi cemented her status not only as a model, but as a global icon. Yet Naomi's dominance went beyond fashion. She was among the first supermodels to cross into mainstream pop culture. Her appearances in George Michael's Freedom 90 music video, Michael Jackson's In the Closet, and Madonna's Erotica proved her appeal could transcend the runway. She also made guest appearances on television shows and in films, further expanding her influence. But what made Naomi's reign so extraordinary was that she carried it in an era when the fashion industry still harbored deep racial biases. She did not just open doors for herself, she kicked them wide open for future generations of Black models. Every time she stepped onto a runway or graced a magazine cover, it was a quiet rebellion against the unspoken rules of beauty in the industry. In the 1990s, Naomi Campbell was not just part of fashion, she was fashion. Her name became synonymous with luxury, glamour, and power, and her presence in a show or campaign could elevate it instantly. She had achieved the rarest of feats in modeling. She was no longer replaceable. Naomi Campbell's rise to the top was not without resistance, and she was never afraid to push back against an industry that often tried to define her limits. From the beginning, she knew that her presence as a Black woman in high fashion was a statement in itself. But Naomi did more than just exist in the space. She demanded that space be hers on her own terms. One of her most defining moments came when she refused to work for brands that did not hire Black models. This stand was not an empty threat. She had the influence to make designers listen. Yves Saint Laurent famously kept her in his shows and campaigns because she was unafraid to walk away if diversity was not respected. When she noticed certain fashion magazines avoiding models of color, she called it out publicly, putting pressure on editors who had long operated in silence. Her refusal to conform extended to her image. While many models softened their personalities to appear more marketable, Naomi embraced her sharp edges. She was unapologetic, direct, and at times intimidating qualities that, in a woman, were often labeled difficult. For Naomi, these were strengths. She cultivated an aura of control, making it clear that she was not just a muse, but a collaborator and a businesswoman. She also broke boundaries in how she managed her career. In an era when models were often told to just model, Naomi crossed over into music, acting, and philanthropy. She released a music album, appeared in films, and lent her influence to charitable causes, particularly in Africa and the Caribbean. This versatility defied the narrow definitions of what a supermodel was supposed to be. Even her runway presence was a rebellion. While most models were trained to be blank canvases, Naomi infused her walk with a sense of identity, a mix of ballet precision and street confidence that no one could imitate. It was not just a walk, it was a declaration. Of course, her boldness sometimes sparked controversy. She was known for fiery disputes, public feuds, and even legal battles. But in Naomi's world, controversy was not necessarily a weakness. It kept her name in the headlines and reinforced her image as someone who would never be controlled. Naomi Campbell's difference was not simply in her beauty or talent. It was in her refusal to play by rules that did not serve her. She was not just modeling clothes. She was modeling the idea that a woman could take control of her image, career, and destiny. And in doing so, she redefined what it meant to be a supermodel. For all her success, Naomi Campbell's career was also shadowed by moments of turmoil that threatened to overshadow her achievements. The media, always eager to sensationalize a powerful woman's missteps, turned her personal struggles into public spectacle. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, headlines about Naomi often focused less on her work and more on her temper. She was accused in several incidents of assaulting assistants, housekeepers, and even employees at photo shoots. These incidents resulted in community service sentences, which the tabloids covered relentlessly, often painting her as fashion's bad girl. While some saw these moments as proof of her uncontrollable temper, others viewed them as symptoms of the relentless pressure and scrutiny she had endured for decades. Behind the scenes, Naomi was also battling personal demons. She publicly acknowledged struggles with drug and alcohol addiction, admitting that the intense demands of the fashion industry and the isolation of fame pushed her toward unhealthy coping mechanisms. In interviews, she spoke candidly about going to rehab and working to rebuild her life, a rare vulnerability from someone so famously guarded. There were also professional setbacks. As the era of the original supermodel faded in the early 2000s, fashion shifted toward younger, less expensive faces. Naomi, with her established fame and high rates, found herself walking fewer shows. Some industry insiders whispered that her outspoken nature had made her difficult to work with, further limiting opportunities. Still, Naomi never fully disappeared. She retreated at times, focusing on personal recovery, traveling, and pursuing charitable work, particularly in Africa. Yet, to the public, these quieter years felt like an absence. The woman who had once seemed to own every runway in the world was no longer as omnipresent, and her fans wondered if she would ever return to her former glory. Her resilience, however, would not allow her story to end in scandal or silence. Even as she navigated court appearances and rehabilitation programs, Naomi continued to make selective appearances in high-profile campaigns and events, reminding the world that she was still a force. But the contrast between the fearless woman on the runway and the fragile human behind the headlines was stark, and it made her all the more enigmatic. Naomi Campbell's disappearance was never total. It was more of a transformation, a recalibration of her life in the face of personal storms. But for a time, the woman who had once been the face of fearless beauty seemed to step back into the shadows, leaving the world to wonder whether the era of Naomi was over for good. Naomi Campbell's legacy is not just stitched into the fabric of fashion. It is woven into the cultural conversation about beauty, race, and power. She is more than a supermodel. She is a symbol of resilience, of refusing to be erased, of forcing an industry to evolve even when it resisted. Her career, spanning nearly 4 decades, shattered barriers for Black models on the world stage. She stood beside her fellow supermodels in the 1990s, yet her presence carried a different weight. Every runway she walked was a reminder that beauty was not limited to one skin tone, one culture, or one story. Beyond the catwalk, Naomi became a mentor to younger models, offering both guidance and a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame. Her philanthropic work, especially in Africa and the Caribbean, further cemented her influence beyond fashion. She proved that the reach of a supermodel could extend far beyond magazine covers. Today, Naomi continues to appear in campaigns and on runways. Her walk as fierce as ever, her stare still capable of stopping a room. But the true measure of her impact lies in the door she opened for every model of color who now steps onto a runway without question. For every woman who dares to be unapologetically herself. Maybe the world has changed. Maybe it is still catching up to Naomi Campbell. But one thing is certain in the story of fashion: her name will never fade.